Hello and welcome to France 24's weekly music show, which is this week jam-packed with Hispanic jazz of all sorts. With us this week, we have Yilian Canizares, a classically trained Cuban artist who has lived across a number of Latin American and European countries and is now based in Switzerland. She's been making a name for herself over the last decade by adding jazz and Afro-Cuban strings to her violin. She's played with the likes of Ibrahim Malouf, Roberto Fonseca and Omar Sosa, to name but a few, and she's just released Habana-Bahia with some party-themed tracks like Bembe, whose animated music video features characters inspired by her actual fans. We also have Spanish artist Antonio Lizana, who is known for blending jazz and flamenco both visually and sonically, having bathed in the music scenes of New York and his native Andalusia and taken flamenco to the next level by giving the saxophone a prime role. He's just released a new album entitled Vishuddha and will also be playing a few gigs here in France. Yilian and Antonio, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
No, it's wonderful having you. I love that you're both exploring music's new borders, new frontiers. You're breaking them with jazz and other sounds. And I wanted to ask you which genre came first. We'll start with Antonio. Was it jazz or flamenco?
Well, my environment was flamenco. So I always say that my body was built in a flamenco environment. But after, because I was playing saxophone, I was so interested about the improvisation, the melodic improvisation. So I got my instrument, took me into the jazz world. So when I started composing music, it came naturally to compose this jazz that I wanted to play, but it came with flamenco rhythms, flamenco melodies, and also I sing flamenco, so I put the voice inside.
Fantastic. Into that. And Yilian, you did classical training with violin, and it's Russian style that you did in Cuba. Yes. How did the Cuban rhythms and jazz come into play later on?
I've been, since I was a child, used to evolve in different musical environments. On one side, the classical training. On the other side, the Cuban folkloric roots and rhythm, which are really strong. So for me, as I grew up as a musician, all these different influence grew together with me, and I just think like music is a way of saying who I am and to putting all these influences together to bring it to the people with my own perspective.
And your new album, Habana-Bahia, is very spiritual in some ways, and you're really embracing these Afro-Cuban roots. There's a lot of sisterhoods. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you turned towards those themes at this time?
Well, this is kind of a picture of a moment of my life, and spirituality is really playing a big role in my life, and I want also to pay tribute to my origins, to my ancestors, to the strengths I feel through the music and through the spiritual practice, and share this with my audience, because especially nowadays we need this positive vibe, we need this positive way of thinking in spirituality that lights our hearts up.
How about we check out one of the tracks taken from this album?
Amo sin miedo, conectando puntos. África y su herencia, echando luz en este mundo. Muchacha, levanta presión, que tú eres una diosa lista para arrasar. Muchacha, levanta presión, que tú eres una guerrera lista para triunfar. Muchacha, levanta presión, yo quiero ver a la cubana y a toda la guayana marcando conmigo este flow.
Recorded in Salvador de Bahia in Brazil, a new track taken off Yilian Canizares' latest album. What was it like going there? Does geography play a lot in your creativity, would you say?
Yeah, for me, I've been, since my present albums, I've been interested into the African heritage. And Salvador de Bahia is like the biggest black city outside Africa. So I was so attracted by what is going on. They are not only musical, but also cultural and spiritual. So I say I need to go there and to give birth and conceive this album there. And I spend like 3 weeks there working with local musicians, learning from their tradition and mixing it with my own Cuban tradition.
Oh, wow, that's really, really interesting. And what about you, Antonio? Tell us a bit about the creative process that went into your new record.
Yeah, well, I normally work with a quintet with my band, and in the last couple years, as you said before, we have been doing like a bunch of concerts, many concerts per year. So it kind of brings a sound of the band. So for this album that is called Vishuddha, it's curious that you were speaking about spirituality because it's the name of the fifth chakra as well, and it speaks about bringing your own voice. So I wanted to bring in this album like the music that was sounding inside me, really with no influence from outside, which was in fact a mix between flamenco and jazz, between the flamenco that is like my sound from my childhood and the jazz experience that I was having with my band. So I have tried to once more to do this kind of fusion.
And to express it. Well, let's take a little look at the teaser for what we can expect on this record. Fantastic new teaser for this album that's full of flamenco and jazz. Because you infuse flamenco, which is kind of music where dancing is a prime role as well. Do you imagine the dancing on the movement, the beats of the shoes tapping on the floor as you're composing? What kind of comes first?
Yeah, for me, when I'm composing the music, I am dancing inside. Like all the arrangements have to be danceable. And also because I have a dancer in my band, so I need to imagine that it's gonna work. But it has to do more than with the fact that I have a dancer, with the fact that I want that all the music, even if it is intellectual and it's just, I want the groove to have the smell, to have that you put a few seconds of the music and you know where you are in the world.
Yeah.
So I think a lot in the groove and in the rhythms of the flamenco.
What I adore about jazz, people sometimes nowadays think it's a bit elitist, but actually I think it's very punk because it's always been, breaking down boundaries and so on. And I was wondering, who were the musicians who inspired you or who currently inspire Yilian?
I will mention first Chucho Valdés, who is my maestro, and I'm very honored to be playing with him in the actuality. And I will also say Nina Simone, because as a woman, and also she has a very strong position about music and the social message of her music, and I feel very drawn to that. From artists that are still alive, more artists that are still alive, I like very much Christian Scott. I like very much Snarky Puppy, Stevie Wonder, of course.
Keyboard kid jazz.
Esperanza Spalding, so many beautiful artists. The world is full of magic if we open ourselves to receive it.
And Antonio, what about you? Who are your go-to musicians?
Yeah, well, we could say that my hero is like this flamenco singer that was from my same town. I'm from his town, Camarón de la Isla. He's the most well-known flamenco singer, and I was born in the same town, so I grew up with his music. The guitar player that used to record the albums with him was Paco de Lucia, so we can say that this is the music of my childhood. And still, when I am in completely foreign situations, that I am in other country, maybe playing in a place that for you feels a little bit of insecure, I always remember his energy, his way of doing the things, and I feel completely empowered. And from the jazz side, Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, you know, they are like
the gods. Well, thank you both so much for coming on Arts 24 to share your stories and latest news. And I want to remind people that you're going to be playing some dates here in France and across Europe this coming month, but also in November. Of course, check out their fantastic records because they are fantastic albums that have just come out. And you can catch Antonio and Yiliana across Europe. Remember that. We're going to play out with some rock and roll stars before we catch the France 24 news. Who are back this month, the hotly awaited Hackney Diamonds by the Rolling Stones. Keith Richards, Mick Jagger, Ronnie Woods are continuing without their legendary late drummer, Charlie Watts. I was wondering, any of this inspiration from the Stones, those big rock stars, their career, they're 80 years old. Do you see yourself tour when you're 80?
I can see myself touring until my death.
Until death. That's a real true musician.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think I could not stop doing this.
I think it's very interesting to see what they have to offer right now because they have nothing to prove. And I think that they are in a very maybe liberating moment of her artistic career. So I'm curious.
Absolutely. And they've just called on a new producer who carried out the work on Ozzy Osbourne's latest album that got a Grammy Award. He's called Andrew Watt. He's their new producer on this one. So it should be going very, very strongly. He is a track taken from this album that features Lady Gaga, Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney, to name a few. And the single's called Angry, the Rolling Stones.